Putin is a tyrant and evil, probably, but my main feeling of him is that he's a tiny character who needs to sort of prove himself, a bit sort of small man syndrome. As a very small, insecure man who's got big tables, big houses, big palaces, and in essence, tiny, lonely. He's probably the only character that I feel almost like sort of hatred towards. Hello, I'm Morten Morland. I'm the political cartoonist for The Times and Sunday Times. And here are some of my drawings of Vladimir Putin.
Well, that is the sound of celebration as the rebels declare Syria is free from its former dictator after 13 years of civil war.
So in December 2024, Assad fell, finally, and he fled Syria and sought asylum in Russia. And so this cartoon sort of shows him arriving in Russia and sort of being greeted by Putin. And obviously Putin had a lot of big stake in Syria.
Moscow's two bases in Syria served as a staging point to project military might through the Middle East and Africa.
What I did here was to sort of create quite a light-hearted gag out of something which is quite serious, and use Putin's way of dealing with his sort of political opponents, which tends to be quite brutal and lots of people falling out of windows and such like.
Ravil Maganov was 67 and reports suggested that he fell from the hospital window.
Maganov's untimely death made him at least the 6th high-profile businessman to die from apparent suicide since January.
And so I had Assad sort of coming to Putin and going, no hard feelings about the potential loss of vital military bases. Putin sort of showing him to his new living quarters at the top floor with the big windows. Visually they are quite funny. Assad had his like enormously long neck and no chin. So in this one I had sort of Assad showing up with his sort of Louis Vuitton suitcase, faintly showing their corruption, you know. With Putin I draw him in a sort of ridiculous uniform, and I always give him a bit of a heel because I imagine that he'd probably want to sort of make himself taller if he could. Whereas you can see with Assad, another sort of little detail is the fact that his trousers are dripping in blood. There is a sort of quite a dark realism to it, in that this could very well happen. Humour became a good vehicle for a serious point, and that makes for a successful cartoon.
If Putin likes Donald Trump, guess what, folks? That's called an asset, not a liability.
Very early on in Trump's presidency, he expressed great admiration for Putin and his style. And this cartoon is from 2017. At the same time as Trump was complaining about the media in America being against him and everyone being, liberals.
The White House has not responded to the
I told you. CNN is fake news. Don't talk to me. Go ahead, please.
And then at the same time, he was expressing all this admiration for Putin and how he did things.
Yesterday, reporters asked me if I thought President Putin was smart. I said, of course he's smart.
Putin would be murdering journalists and opposition politicians. And I thought that juxtaposition was quite interesting. It was awful. The line being like Trump complaining that America is full of bleeding hearts, liberals, and Putin holding his gun saying so is Russia. And it's really hard to see if it's mutual admiration or if it's just like Trump saw him as a useful idiot. Putin saw Trump as a useful idiot, probably. I think that's probably more likely than it being a sort of mutual respect. Trump clearly thought he was quite fabulous.
Under no circumstances, you are promising America tonight, you would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one.
Trump isn't a dictator quite officially yet. He's got the same characteristics, this sort of bombastic, quite full of themselves thing that they both share. And this is part of what's so much fun about drawing them, because they're so pompous. The Putin in this one is much more the sort of old Putin, where I still draw him shirtless and this kind of muscly character.
Donald Trump has been saying that he will run for president as a Republican, which is surprising since I just assumed he was running as a joke.
One thing that all these people share is that they hate being mocked. You know, that's the worst thing you can do to someone like that, a populist politician like that. And so that makes it so satisfying to draw them.
Loud explosions have been now heard in Ukraine in lots of different cities as the Russian assault has begun.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine happened on the 24th of February 2022, and this was drawn the day after, so it kind of gets the response of the world immediately after the invasion, where I tried to sort of get the faces across of these various groups. So you have Americans in the forefront, you have the Brits to the right, and then in the background you also see EU and these other countries, including China's President Xi. And so there's that kind of like worldwide response, and this awkwardness, if you're sort of, this awkwardness when there's a sudden brawl in a restaurant where you're having your nice meal and you don't know quite what to do, and that's kind of the feeling that you had with the invasion. What I wanted to show was a sort of more of a scene rather than a gag, rather than a cartoon. The point is not really on Putin and Zelensky, even though they are the center of the cartoon. Putin is attacking Zelensky in the middle of this crowded restaurant, and you have Mother Russia sort of trying to hold back her delinquent husband or whatever he is to her. But the criticism is almost more on everyone else. You have all these other powerful world leaders sat around seeing this man, Zelensky, being beaten, pummeled, and they're just sat there quite uncomfortable and a bit annoyed that their lovely meal is being, disrupted. It was that sort of sense of inaction from world leaders that I tried to get across in this particular image. We're back to the bare-chested, but it is the visceralness of that, of his shirt ripped off, but he's unhealthy, he's unfit, and drunk, even though obviously, as most people know, that he himself is teetotal, I believe. But it's the action is that of someone drunk and out of control. This was probably the first, or maybe the second, but one of the absolute first time I drew Zelensky, and so I didn't have him as a character really. I hadn't really studied him much, and this is also before he had the beard, which has now become a bit of a trademark, and the clothes. Obviously now he has this sort of army fatigues style stuff that he's wearing. So even if I looked at this picture first time now, I would go, oh, Zelensky. But clearly at the time, you can see I was slightly unsure whether it would come across, so I put a little ripped flag. It's like almost like putting a label going Zelensky over the top, which is a bit embarrassing.
What do you think Putin would say if he met you in a similar context?
If Putin met me, he'd probably offer me tea, I reckon.